This episode is sponsored by Monkey Stuff. Monkey Stuff makes things for makers. We're inspired every day by the craft and creativity of makers and design and manufacture tools and accessories to try to make your making life a bit more delightful. Our products are designed in California, by makers and for makers, and manufactured in the USA. Check out our line of pottery accessories and tools at monkeystuff.com. Follow us on Instagram to see what we're up to in our studios, and keep on making great things.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply located in Dayton, Ohio, exclusive distributor of Jen Allen templates and Put a Lid on It t-shirts. Find all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs, including the largest stock of GR pottery forms at cornellstudiosupply.com. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters, by potters.
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze.
Hello, everybody. This is producer Ben, who you usually hear in the back of our For Flux Sake episodes, laughing at all of the silliness and learning a lot. In fact, I have learned a ton from the guys over the years. And now we have an opportunity for you to learn from them directly at our next live show, which is coming up June the 5th at the Harvard Ed Portal. This is basically a little black box theater that's beside the Harvard Ceramics program, the home of Kathy King. So if you'd like to come on out, that's going to be June the 5th from 5 to 6 p.m. You can register for that. It is a free event, but you do have to register. There is a very long Harvard website you can register at, so I think I'm just going to tell you to go to ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com/upcoming events. And then for today's episode, what you're going to listen to today is going to be a Flux U episode, which you haven't heard on this main For Flux Sake podcast feed yet. These are the special episodes that we record for patrons on Patreon. And these Flux U episodes are a little bit loose, and they're also answering direct listener questions. I did want to mention that there will also be a special live recording of a Flux U episode on June the 6th from 10 to 1 p.m. That one is actually a paid event, so you will need to register for that at ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com/upcoming events. So without any more babbling from me, we're going to get to Flux U.
Hello, Matt and Rose and producer Ben.
Hello. Can I move my tassel to the other side at the end of this?
Oh, slow your roll. Slow your roll.
Hello, Professor King. How are you today? I brought you an apple.
Here's an apple.
Has it got a razor blade in it? Oh my God. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we have so many great questions. Anything particular happening in your worlds?
I'm sitting here with my evil black kitty on my lap. This is how casual Flux U is. You know, we had Ben's puppy in our last recording, so
I know.
So our slinky black kitty decided to show up, and she's right off camera, but now she's shedding all over my desk. But she's
probably
down
because you were
dulcet
yelling.
tones.
She's trying to lower your heart rate.
No, she just yelling is her spirit energy because she's a rage screamer.
She is. She comes running when you yell. It's funny.
Yeah, she's down. She's like, who can I yell at? Who can I up? Bring my claws to the fight.
Over the break, I went to Tennessee to visit with my wife's family, and they had her niece home who had a German Shepherd and had a support animal, thing on, and immediately bit her mom, and so the youngin had just put that, you get it off of Amazon, and she wanted to keep it in the dorm at school because she's like an RA. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is just way too easy. But it is really true. People try, I mean, I love dogs. They don't try and bring cats in often to the studio, but people do try and bring their dogs. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to need to see the receipt for where you got that outfit.
I mean, we are pet people, Rose and I. We have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and we've always had animals, but I want to leave them at home. I do not want to bring, I don't want to bring any of those butts anywhere.
Right? Do you need to go to Trader Joe's with the cats? I mean, there's so many animals. Anyway, all right. I digress. Okay. So let's take our first question. All right. And so this is a text question. You're going to have to listen to me ramble for a little bit. But this one comes from LJ Cohen. And LJ asked, "Hello, all. I've been listening to the podcast from your very first episode and recommend it to all my Potter friends." Thank you, LJ. "I have a question about glaze layering. Why do some combinations look completely different on a fired pot depending on which glaze gets applied first, while other combinations are fairly similar regardless of which glaze gets applied first? Furthermore, some are stable in one direction, and when the order of application is flipped, will crawl or pinhole or jump off the pot." I like that one. She said, "Which is why we make test tiles for every combination with all the bodies we use." I will make mention of that later. "If the result of layering 2 glazes is a chemical mix of the materials in both glazes, why is there often such a difference in glaze order?" And giving some background, we're talking about studio using Laguna, a couple of different bodies, B-mix, and they fire an oxidation at cone 6. And they also mix their own glazes. So thank you for that background. That little bits of info are always helpful.
Yeah, they are.
So what do y'all think?
Well, I go to you first, which is, I mean, you run the studio. What are there layering rules in the studio? Are people allowed to do it? Are they banned?
I will not. I really struggle with this, but everybody wants that glaze combo test tile wall, and I can't. I just won't do it. We have enough problems with people just doing it on their own, and I'm not sure if showing them a good example of it, because people don't put up the crappy test tiles.
Look, kids, I'm not telling you to jump your motorbike off that cliff, but if you were going to do it, here's how you do it.
Like if I could do the test style overlap, board of doom, I would do that, and show how this is going to screw everything up. What do you do, Ben? Do you have the overlap wall?
Yeah, well, we have all the glazes on all the clays we use, and then we have a much, much smaller selection of the overlaps with the main clay we use, just so they understand visually, like you can overlap these, but we're not going to give you all the answers. Because I think about it a little like a test. Like I want them to know they should find their answers to their own tests, but I don't want to give them all the answers to the test. Because then actually, I've been in studios though where we did all of them and it didn't help either way.
No, I know. I think it's like the horror is going to happen regardless, really.
Well, first, it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And secondly, that's like your balance sheet in accounting. It's just a snapshot of what that glaze buckets are and who applied it and how they applied it. That does not mean that same person can go back to the next bucket and it's gonna be the same. It's not. Like those,
not just that, but the multiple clay bodies.
Yeah, and then oh my God, it's so much work. Like you're looking at hundreds of tests. You have 2 bodies, okay, times everything by 2. Got 3 bodies, times everything by 3. And then like how many glazes you have, times that by however many clay bodies. It's like so much
wall. Yeah.
Yeah. And then materials change. So I gotta go back and do it again. We got rid of this glaze. So I gotta get rid of all these tests.
Well, and what you say, Rose, is part of the problem because, it takes so long to make those test tiles so that when, we've done changes since then and we do all the normal glazes on each of the clay or 4 of them. Is it 4 or 5? Anyway, but, we don't redo them all. So we're looking at a test style from like maybe 10 years ago. And I mean, I'm not afraid to admit it. It's like, anyway.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work for just a little snippet, and there's no guarantee that it's going to work for a different person at the same time. So I like Ben's answer that, you're not giving them all the answers. They have to go and figure it out. But it also opens up the fact that you could have some big kiln disasters with that too.
Oh, yeah.
So, because you're just like, okay, you can go and test it and see what's going to happen. And you could have somebody who's, had a bad day at application and have a meltdown in your kiln.
Well, I'll talk all about the ways that you can them up chemically, but I want to, before we go there, I want to touch base because I mean, Rose, I know your history is making pots. You were a one glaze person. You were hardcore. Like, this is the one, maybe sometimes two, but they were never layered. They would be butted.
No. Yeah. I never layered them. They were always butted up together. And my glaze palette was very simple. Like, I did not want that complication of having this huge palette of glazes at my disposal. I've already put so much freaking time in designing what this piece is, executing it, getting it through the kiln just fine, and then overwhelming myself with, oh God, what glazes am I gonna do? And then, oh, can I layer them? That's even more combinations and overwhelming information. Just, I like to say, keep it simple, stupid. That's for me. Just keep it simple. Don't complicate things.
Another influence, though, I just want to throw in is the success of companies like Amico and other companies that have the really built out lines of commercial glazes now, and they really push the overlap. Like, you look in the catalog, it is about layering.
They got the same glazes. They need just a new way to sell their glazes. Like, excuse my language. I'm a little feisty today.
On the regular show, y'all think I'm the meanie. Now the reality that
now you get to hear Rose's
it's like they're not they're just figuring out a new way to sell the same old glazes.
I don't even hold that against it. They want to make reasons for people to buy their glazes, and semi-interesting. But Ben and Kathy, I mean, you are both the professional makers here. What's your history? I don't think either of you do any layering now. Ben, I might be wrong.
I use clear. Or tinted clear.
I like it, Kathy.
well, let me tell you how complicated mine is. I use clear with 2 colorants added.
You elitist.
But I realize there is also how there's class distinctions in the world. I feel like there's class distinctions in layering when it comes to temperature. So like low fire people I've noticed don't layer a lot. Cone 6 people layer a ton. And I think that has to do with going back to the commercial companies make Cone 6 a lot. Cone 10, I've seen a lot of people layer, but it's not as much as Cone 6. Like Cone 6 seems to be the
layering area. Low fire, I think of like the amazing Lisa Orr. Like, that's true. That's a good point. Rama. Yeah.
So actually, Lisa was the one I wanted to talk about, because my where I was interested in it is the professional application. Because I would even argue, I was just hanging out with Lisa. I was just at her studio, and brought home a couple of pots. But I would even argue that she's not layering. I would argue that she is actually doing a version of what Rose would do, which is mixing and matching and butting up against each other. And sure, there's a little bleed through. But if you stop and look at Lisa's pots, she's got the layers of information, but it's not layered, right? It is, I am using underglaze to emphasize this detail. I am using the aventurine glaze to emphasize this detail, but it's actually one unified layer. And here's the one, again, not to alienate our listeners, but what my real question is, but I'm serious. I think that this is a distinction between the professional and the pursuist, the person who is still developing their studio habits, their studio repertoire. That layering is a good way to make things exciting while you are still learning your process. But when you get to the professional layer, the professional maker, you know what your artistic product is, and you hit it. It is going to be consistent, and it is going to be precise. and that layering doesn't do that. And I'm having a really hard time thinking of any of my professional friends who are really actively using layering as a professional.
The one I can think of is Stephen Hill, but it's because he's doing a very specific crystalline thing where for one, he's once firing. He's also spraying the glazes on, and to
But
get
that's it. He's putting
Controlling
different
it, yeah.
glazes, but it's not layers as much.
Well, that's
With
true,
his, because
yeah.
it's spray, there might be more overspray, but he is putting specific glazes on specific geometry for a specific effect. It's not layering per se. And maybe that's semantic. I'm not a maker.
But I think because he's spraying, he gets around what the heart of this question is, which is when you dunk one glaze over top of the other,
Right.
and then reverse the order, it is surprisingly different because the application of
yeah.
dunking is not, we think it's very specific, but it's not very specific because you might hold it
it's
into the
chaos.
bucket longer. There's all these things that are different.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the technical side of it. So what are we looking at? The first thing that we need to understand about when you're layering glazes is that people often think that you're like making some new chemistry. You absolutely are not. You are watching two glazes melt together. And so it is a non-homogeneous mixture. That is the very basis of what this is. Because although everybody assumes like, oh, you layer them together, they just melt together. Nope, those two layers are independent chemistries, even when you fire them, because our melting process, once again, I say this all the time on the main show, it is insanely short. Our glazes only melt for the last 100 degrees C, 180 degrees F of the firing on the way up, and they only remain viscous until about 850 C on the way down, and that's about an hour. So what that is saying is that the total melting process in any firing is about 2 hours at most. And so that thought that, people look at glazes and they assume like, oh, you take 7-Up and you pour it on top of Coke and they'll just mix because they're both just water. Glass is insanely viscous, and viscous fluids don't just flow like that. They don't just flow into each other instantaneously. Do they flow into each other? Yes, but it takes time. So the first question, why do some glazes look boring when you layer them? Well, if you take two glossy glazes and you take one that's blue and one that's red, like, will they slowly emerge into each other? Sure, but all you're going to get is some version of a purple because it's just the visual information of the purple, of the blue color and the red color coming together. And it's just glossy. There's nothing chemically going on. The glazes that look like they do something interesting comes down to what is going on in those glazes. The number one thing that people find interesting in layering glazes is put a matte glaze on top of a glossy glaze. Why? Because a matte glaze has crystals that grow inside of it. So as that glaze on top submerges into the glaze below, the glass will begin to homogenize into the underglass, but the crystals will not dissolve as easily because they have formed as this independent chemical thing. So you'll get these like little spots of crystallization throughout that glaze. So that can be interesting. The next one that people will find interesting is an iron-based glaze underneath a glaze that is not iron-based. This occurs because iron decomposes. We've talked about iron goes through what we call thermal decomposition, which is at cone 4, iron breaks down and releases oxygen as a byproduct, and this makes bubbles inside the glass. Those bubbles cannot rise in the glass, but what they can do is that they can swell until they reach the surface and then pop. And that will create a level of distortion because when it swells, it'll literally push the top glaze aside, and then you'll get these spots of the bubbles from the undercoat. And that's most of what glaze layering is basically working with those two reactions. Glazes homogenizing together.
I think too, there's also, so you're talking the chemistry thing. I think there's also a properties kind of element playing into it too, of why certain glazes can't mix, why certain ones work better when they're under versus over, or you flip them. Too. I think that properties, that working properties of that glaze or glazes can not work so well either.
Well, that's the Shino thing.
Yeah, like the Shino thing, and what LJ's talking about, the crawling and pinholing, and I love the jumping off the pot. I hate when that happens. Hate it. Boing.
Yeah, it is that is at CMW we call that a studio problem versus a kiln problem. And there's a lot of glaze defects that get blamed on like something happening crazy in the kiln, when it's really like, no, it's how the particles work. I talk all the time about particle packing, which is how all the particles fill the spaces in that application. Particle packing is a huge deal. I'm not going to go into it, but like Shinos have really fucked up particle packing. Like Shinos as a recipe, everything is wrong with them. And that what happens is other particles just physically don't want to bond to that structure. Because what'll generally happen is that Shinos will have very poor particle packing, and then the other glazes will have very intense particle packing. And when you try to put the intense thing on the loose thing, it's like trying to take an OCD person and like, you put them in a 16-year-old's bedroom. They're just going to run away and be like, no, I cannot be here. Because they cannot physically interact. So the glazes will peel. Displacement bubbling is a thing where, sometimes glazes will bubble in the application. And with layering, it can be a big problem because when you put the first layer on, you're going to saturate that bisqueware with water, and glaze application is based on absorption of water. Well, then you've got this top layer of unfired glaze that has particle packing, which may restrict the water coming through it to the bisqueware. And then the bisqueware may be losing its suction, its capillary suction, because it's been saturated with water from the first application. So that can really screw with how well those are going to apply. And then the last one is glaze shrinkage. Nobody talks about it, but glazes in the green state have shrinkage. Okay, it's not just a clay body problem. Glazes have shrinkage, and if you layer,
it's just not the cold weather.
Right.
That's what they always say.
I feel attacked.
Always blame it.
I'm going to stay silent.
Yeah, me too, really, Ben. But
Ben, you get to stay silent during the regular show. This is where quality matters. The quality goes both ways. But yeah, the glaze shrinkage, and no, we don't have good measurement and metrics for it. It's just that these glazes shrink. And then the clay bodies on top of it. She mentions using like 3 or 4 different clay bodies. Once again, glaze application depends on your clay body's absorption rate. And every clay body, every single one has got a different absorption rate. And so you're going to get different layering effects, different particle packing effects on different clay bodies, and it will be a consistent.
And on top of that, it depends on how you bisque too.
It does.
Oh, for goodness sakes. Here we go. 5,000 variables. I love ceramics. I heart ceramics.
Actually, but that is a profoundly important point, because everybody just takes layering as like this simple thing to do. And why does it always get fucked up? It always gets fucked up because it's an insanely complicated thing to do.
Yeah.
And it is not easy. And honestly, going back to why I wanted to bring home the professional point is like, because it looks like a good solution now, but let me tell y'all, those of you who are out there trying to get your pots noticed, trying to get out and to make your artistic stance, man, figure out how to use one glaze professionally rather than trying to layer them just to make them interesting, because it is something that is going to keep you back from artistic growth. And it is just a thing that we have to practice to, because the layering will be a thing. I have to go back. One more technical thing I forgot to mention. Oftentimes you'll hear people say that glazes will run more when you layer them. And that is there some sort of magic chemical reaction that makes that happen? Absolutely not. What is happening is that people put on one full coating of glaze 1 and then one full coating of glaze 2. And that glazes only run for 2 reasons. 1, they are too thick. 2, they are overfired. 3, they are too thick and overfired. And that is the classic example. It is not some magic chemistry. It is a thickness problem. And so, LJ, I hope don't take this as us beating up on you. It is just that it is so much more complicated and than we perceive to be. And once again, what I always say is you have to build a working relationship with every glaze in your life. And that is going to give you the best performance in your studio, is knowing what that glaze is and having control over it.
So maybe keeping it within a small number of glazes and do those kind of combinations and take those notes and take photos and do that research first.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go on to a next question. And this question comes from Tessia or Tessia, not sure, but lovely name, Tessia Beam. And they write, I live in Marin County, California, and have been working with clay for about a year now. I'm loving hand building for so many reasons, and it's extra fantastic that I can do it at home. But when I'm not enrolled in a class, I don't have a way to finish off my work. So I'm considering getting my own kiln, which is terrifying to me, but needs must. So my question is for you, what would you recommend as a good starter kiln? Are low voltage kilns okay? I'm not sure if I can swing setting up a higher voltage plug situation right now. Also, it's very likely that I will need to set it up outside. Space is limited inside. So that's another consideration I have to tackle. Thank you so much for anything that you can offer for this daunting venture. This is such a great question because I know so many people are trying to figure this out. You know, do I call the electrician and take the plunge, or hey, I just saw this thing on this kiln that I can just plug into the wall. So what's the tea, people?
Well, hold on. Ben was shaking his head. Ben, lay it out. Come on.
What do you know, Ben? What do you know?
Okay, so this is coming from someone who's moved a lot. Like I have moved so many times in my professional career. And at some point, I thought I'll cut corners and get a low voltage kiln because it'll just
hold
be
on, for everybody
easy.
who doesn't know, these are kilns. So American electricity is 120 volts. And that's just your normal plug in your, your light, your TV plug. And the rest of the world works on, or most of the world works on 240, which is what kilns run on. So the rest of the world, you can just buy that type of kiln and you've got that around the house. In the States, we have half the voltage, and there are kilns that are made to use that voltage. So sorry, go ahead, Ben, continue.
Thank you.
Yeah. But the fear that I slowly developed with this, and granted, this is only a test kiln and it's only firing to low fire, so it's not drawing that much. But what I started to notice is that even though the electricity was run by an electrician to this particular plug, and I was plugging it right into there, I slowly started to realize that a kiln like that is really susceptible to arcing, which is where the plug is just a little loose and there's an arc, electrical arc between the plug and the outlet itself, which that is very dangerous. And once I realized that, I started to realize like, oh no, people all across America have these kilns in their kitchens. They have these kilns everywhere. And if your dog walks past and wiggles the plug a little bit, or your kid, in my case, my kid, does something with it, it's not that the theory of the kiln broke down, it's the practical application of having a low voltage kiln. When you get a higher voltage kiln, a lot of that's taken care of, like the way that the electricians do the plugs and the kiln companies do the plugs. You can't really wiggle them around in the same way.
Yeah. It's just like your electric dryer. They take that fault risk out completely.
Well, and I will say, if you go and look around, American 120 outlets have some serious design flaws that you won't see in outlets in other parts of the world. Like if our plug is supposed to be flush with the wall. If you go to, no, I forget it. I think it's the Aussie ones, that the receptacle is round and the plug has a round hole. So the plastic on the plug is embedded in the plastic of the plug or on the socket. And so when you plug it in, even if it's not inserted 100% of the way, the metal prongs are not exposed. And that's actually a really big safety measure for that type of thing. So yeah, that is definitely a problem. And I mean, I'll talk about the electricity, but the one thing to say, actually, this is, we might answer this on the podcast later, because I think there's a similar question on the podcast questions about leaving kilns unattended. To be clear, why are there fires in ceramic studios? There are two reasons. One of them, and neither of them have to do with the kiln itself. One of them is you left something combustible on top of your kiln. So you left a towel or a rag or something that will burn, a box, something external that will catch fire from the residual heat. Now, that's actually pretty low chance of happening because of the way heat transfer works and the inherent insulation of the kiln, but it could happen. Number two, okay, people just think it's like the kiln being hot and all that's dangerous. No, the number one reason why there are fires in kilns is poor electrical connections. So electricity that's not run from the box and installed by a contractor or a person who knows exactly what they are doing. So yeah, you get some sort of arcing. That is a huge problem. And that's where,
and it's not just
arcing
at the plug. It could be arcing in the wall too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is
100%.
even more terrifying.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's in California. She could put it outside. I mean, they get colder temperatures, but they don't get temperatures like we do here in New England. But she could put it outside in a shed or have it protected.
Have you talked to anybody who has one of the low voltage kilns who actually likes it?
We have a company that we did a job with a couple of years ago that was not a traditional ceramics company, and they were starting off on experiments. And because they were not a ceramics company, we advised them on getting one of them for that particular application. It was fine-ish for what was going on. That said, I also don't endorse the 120 kilns, because they have an even bigger problem from, oh my gosh, sorry. The problem is electricity is not the voltage, okay? Electricity is about wattage, which is volts times amps. And if you, the residential house plug, the highest number of amps that you can get, I believe, not an electrician, I believe the highest you can get is 20 amps for a 120 volt system. That gives you 240 watts of electricity, which, to just put it colloquially, ain't. That is not enough power to successfully generate the amount of heat that you need. And that is the inherent limitation.
But they're like little tiny things, though, aren't they?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because kilns are not so much boxes for, they're really boxes for trying to keep heat in, but heat always wants to go away. So our elements are always struggling with the fact that the heat is radiating out through the walls while we keep putting it in. And those don't put in enough to keep up with the dissipation of the heat that you already made. And so they struggle. And that is the issue. Whereas 240, there's no problem, because I mean, you can get one of our kilns pulls 100 amps at 240, and that, that's like, and I'm sure Kathy's got. Oh, you probably have 3-phase, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, so jealous.
Kathy's got sexy electricity.
Ooh, I had no idea. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, well, I mean, in terms of just making I guess a good suggestion for a beginner kiln, though, I mean, I'm going to vote for getting the electrician. In terms of size, I think like a Scut, what is it, 18, that kind of smaller size. Because, if you do the work and make the investment of getting the right plug system, you can always get a bigger kiln later. But to have not the smallest test kilns, which I love, and it is awful tempting to want to use those over and over and over again, but you don't get the same results out of those, it seems, that you do with a slightly bigger kiln. But that should be enough to start out with, I would think, unless you're making big stuff. Yeah.
I always say my advice for buying kilns is buy the most number of features in the smallest kiln you can afford. So I'm always down with small kilns. There's nothing wrong with it. And the thing, actually, Kathy, that you're saying about like them not matching the results, that's almost always a cooling issue, because those kilns are so small, the heat just dumps out from them so fast.
Yeah.
So there's no residual heat, and they often don't have any shelves or stilts to help keep the heat in. So if you do have a test kiln, you probably might want to look at using cooling programs to just try to keep a reflection of the heat, but it's not the kiln itself that that seems different. It's just the way that they behave for heat retention. But yeah, totally call an electrician, do it pro.
And I doubled the 818. I looked it up. It's like a 2.4 cubic foot. And that's big enough to make some nice pots, but it's small enough that you also won't break your back moving it. Because one of the things that can happen is while you're moving your kiln, you drop the kiln. And these things are not durable. I'm speaking from experience here. I have broken the bottom row of my 1027 soft brick multiple times by just thinking, oh, I'm strong enough to do this, and I wasn't. So also the 818 is like perfect for moving around.
Nice. Yeah. So I have a request today. What? So Matt brought up 2 good words that I'm going to try to use as many times as I can today.
Ooh, okay.
You?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And one is viscous. Yeah.
Always good.
Viscous and thermal decomposition. So technically 3 words, but so yeah, I think our kids are going to kill me by the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I watch so many British murder mystery shows. Like, I'm just going to be waiting for somebody to say, well, it was thermal decomposition.
Yes.
That killed.
It was so, her blood was so viscous.
I love the ones like that all take part in one small little village, in Scotland or the UK, and everybody dies every week. It's crazy.
And has like an ancient church in the middle of it.
Absolutely. Love them. Well, Americans are so addicted to those right now. Anyway, so thank you, Patreon Pottery Posse, for being with us yet again. We love doing this. Thank you so much. Until we get to do this again, y'all.
Catch y'all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you on the flip side.
Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week. And if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at forfluxsakepodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time. And when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system. Beep.
Hi, everyone. If you've been leaning into our glaze deep dives to troubleshoot your studio struggles or just geek out over oxide ratios, we'd love to invite you to join us over on our Patreon.
Think of it as the flux that helps our creative process flow a little more smoothly.
Producing For Flux Sake takes a lot of behind-the-scenes chemistry, from research time to tech costs. By becoming a Patreon member, you're directly helping us keep the show independent and technical.
By supporting us at the $5 a month tier, you get access to our Patreon Flux U bonus episodes, archived For Flux Sake Season 1 and Season 2. And you get priority submission for your questions from the team to answer in future episodes. Oh, and along with exclusive For Flux Sake merch.
We know how quickly the cost of cobalt adds up, so we've kept our tiers accessible. Every bit of support means we can spend more time answering your questions and less time worrying about the business side of things.
So check out our link on our show notes or visit patreon.com and keep the conversation and the kilns firing.